All right, another episode here of the Industrialist, and got a good longtime friend of mine here. Met him on the streets, just knocking on his door, but many years later, here we are, Mr. Andre Simon, owner of Generation Trade.
Right. Thank you, Jeremy.
Yeah, how you doing?
Doing great, man. Doing great. It's exciting to see all the growth and on your side and between us, with the business on Matador Capital.
Yeah, no, we've kind of been running parallel paths, watching each other's business grow over the last 13, 14 years or whatever it is. So
that's right.
Why don't you just start off and kind of tell everybody what Generation Trade is, what you guys do? I think that would kind of help lay some good groundwork to talk about then the beginning to where we are today.
Okay. So. Generation Trade started 23 years ago, importing residential furniture from across Asia and Brazil, Vietnam, Malaysia, China, Brazil, and a little bit from Turkey. And we sell to small independent furniture stores. Started off predominantly in North Texas, but now we've expanded through the region up to Kansas, Oklahoma, Louisiana, down into Mississippi and Alabama and South Texas. McAllen, we have a warehouse to feed a underserved market. And we have our own trucks, sales reps, drivers, and staff that service and cater to small independent furniture stores that are sometimes underserved by the market. A lot of our competitors are very large. Like you have Ashley Furniture and Coaster Company and 10 or 20 more that focus on that niche, and some of them approach $1 billion and exceed $1 billion. Our business is much smaller, but we've never dreamt that it would even come to this level when I started. So each day we grow it carefully, slowly, with this niche, serving smaller retailers who need services that maybe they have difficulty getting from others, whether it be credit terms, flexible financing to open a store or two or three, reasonable delivery, fair margins, because we don't have a lot of management. We're kind of, I don't have a lot of, it's just myself and my wife and our people who don't have a lot of titles, but everybody's cross-trained to do what they need to do. And we've seen growth almost every year for the last 23 years, except for the past 2 or 3 years, because after COVID, we grew quite a bit, during COVID rather. And the furniture industry as a whole globally has fallen in the past 2 to 3 years, mainly because of the interest rates and housing development.
Yeah. No, talking about being not having all the management in your company, it's something interesting I always notice whenever I come over to your place. Like, someone will always call you while we're over there, and it's one of your just retail little clients, and they're like, and you're like, hey, I think that's being around you in your building. I can tell the business was built by you just always helping out these little retailers that needed help. And I can just hear the conversations you're having all the time. And I know what you're doing. Like, I can tell you're like, hey, this guy needs some help with this. Hey, and then, you're going and helping them get their thing. And then, we're back to whatever we're doing at the time or whatever, but I can just tell that kind of, that touch you have with these guys is what's really grown your business.
I believe I'm glad you see that. And that's how the business started. I guess a lot of it is really because of gratitude, because I was so thrilled that I could start something on my own after working in companies in my 20s. Yeah. And then when I was 30, I was like, hey, whatever this takes, I just want to start anything, move back to Dallas from North Carolina. I was working in the global shipping ocean for a freight forwarding company, selling the ocean freight. And I said, no matter what it takes, I just want the chance to start something on my own. And, when I did that, I was really grateful and committed and to these customers, irregardless of size, preferably smaller. Yeah. Because now there's over 500 furniture stores that buy from us, and that's very healthy and diversification.
Yeah.
Nowadays, especially when businesses are closing, we don't feel the fear of having trouble, of losing a customer. Our biggest customer might do 2 or 3% of our business.
Yeah.
But back to the part about the service, it is gratitude-based. I think, some people just want to help others.
Mm-hmm.
And that's really the core value, I think, of our business. I'm not really as concerned about the financial growth and to be the biggest guy or the, grow volume over and over every year. But everything really revolves on keeping our customer retention and doing what's right for the customer, and not taking it personal in terms of the struggles they have and how, whenever they have trouble, we want to listen and solve the problem that they're having.
Yeah.
And I try to work with my staff to instill the same way of thinking, because sometimes they feel like, hey, Andre, no, this guy sliced the box and it cut the sofa, or they dropped it and smashed the corner. They want to return it for full credit, or they're not paying their bill, or we're not being treated fairly.
Yeah.
You shouldn't take that crap.
Yeah.
Do something. Stop selling to them or deal with them in a harsh way. But I find that the customers, or the beauty of wholesale, is that customer is part of your family now, and they stay with you now for 20 plus years.
Mm-hmm.
And sometimes they change and they see how, these other 10 companies treated me that way and they closed the door on me. But Generation Trade dealt with my crap, and they talked to me with respect, and they dealt with it professionally, and they solved the problem. And they probably knew that I was trying to pull one over on them, but they still dealt with it carefully, managed it carefully, and retained me as a customer. And then they end up growing with us and becoming a very, very great customer.
Yeah.
And so people are learning. We're learning how to deal with problems better. They're learning on their businesses. Many times the obstacle of entry into a furniture store is very low. So they don't have to have high levels of education or lots of special business experience. They just are raw, hardworking people that get in their pickup. Maybe they started without a store like me,
mm-hmm.
and a public storage unit, and a very minimal operation. And they just try to do their best, and they learn each day how they see the people who are failing in business, and they adjust. And
they learn what not to do.
Learn what to do. And we've seen some customers grow from that into 5-6 stores across the Metroplex.
Yeah. Well, let's start. I like the storage unit story. I love the picture you have up of that, and so let's talk about that. Let's start from the beginning. So, where'd you grow up?
In a small town in Olean, Olean, New York.
Yep. Yeah. So it's a Buffalo area, right?
Yeah, south of Buffalo.
Yeah.
Yeah, and great town. I was actually just there last week for my cousin's wedding, and I bought my childhood home there about a year ago, and it's a very small home. It was like a 1,200 square foot home that seemed like a mansion when we were kids.
Yeah.
Now we go back, and it was very destroyed, and it meant a lot to go back there and bring that back into our family, me and my brother and sister and mom and our kids. And it was a good experience. Mm-hmm. But the town itself was, about a 5-hour drive from New York City. And back in 1890, my grandparents immigrated from what is today Lebanon, when it was the Ottoman Empire.
Okay.
So at that time, many people were leaving the Middle East because of the pressures, and it was a lot of people were leaving the Middle East at that time, in Europe. Mm-hmm. And so they end up going to New York City and working in different trade mills, producing garments, because the silk mills in my mother's village in Lebanon and my father's, where they're from, were predominant in that trade, in the textile trade. And I just learned of this, like reading an article not too long ago, how the textile industry in New York produced these sales reps who would get out there, peddlers, and they would go and sell to the industrial businesses out in the small mountain river towns of Western New York and Pennsylvania, et cetera. And they would sell suspenders and shoes and hats and trousers that they made in the city to all these industrial workers. And the industrial workers were working in petroleum and heavy industry in the early 1900s. And that's what my grandfather did, and all my 8 uncles. My father had 8 brothers, and they all were big, rough guys back in the day, before the Depression.
Yeah.
And that's what they did in this little town that was kind of booming. And then, so that's the Olean part,
okay.
Right? And it had a lot of impact on me and the choices of this business because my father died when I was 9 years old, and we're surrounded at our church by all his buddies,
Yeah.
And it was right across the street from our house. And those guys were mostly business owners. Mm-hmm. They owned the liquor stores and the dry cleaners and the restaurants and the bus lines, and Italian and Lebanese immigrants is what made up the town.
Okay.
And they were all kind of self-employed. And I always looked up to them. And I started at that young age trying to go and wax their cars and shovel their snow and rake their leaves and paint their houses. And we'd park cars from the high school events at the church to raise money for the church, and we'd keep half.
Yeah.
So it was very fun. That's what we do with our spare time, me and my neighbor, Max Bear. And that's how I chose to use my time. I used to enjoy working, mm-hmm. and I'd get excited to earn a couple dollars and save the money.
Yeah.
And I was very cautious with the money at a young age, because I remember like my mom, she went to take a loan for $10,000 in 1981 after my father passed and her father passed. Mm-hmm. And she said, I better get this money from the bank, Olean Bank of New York. And it took her 10 years to pay back. Okay. And I remember the coupon book that she had to submit the loans, and we'd go every month together. Yeah. Sometimes we'd skip school, She'd take us for lunch. Yeah. And she said, come with me. We're going to the bank today. We'll have lunch. We'll make the payment. And I saw that money paid every month. And for 10 years, and it was like a fear that we had to, I was like, wow, Mom, all this money you borrowed to take us to meet your mother in Lebanon.
Yeah.
And, I was probably 10 or 11 years old. And she was committed to doing that no matter what. But to see what it took to pay that loan off, and being in the situation we were with a very limited income, it was kind of, it made you a little scared.
Yeah.
But at the same time said, hey, we're going to get this done here over the next 10, 20 years, and we got to control our future because nobody else can do it.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
It's me and my brother and sister. She was working at age 14. We're all driving. She was driving at age 14 because my mom, she didn't drive. She didn't read or write, didn't have education. So she relied on us to do everything.
Yeah.
So even write the checks in the house and everything. So it was, it's kind of a good experience, even though it was something people would look at and say, oh, poor kids, But the interesting thing is that all 3 of us grew up with that confidence and responsibility to manage our finances. Yeah. Because she needed us.
Right.
So that was really a blessing. That I don't think if it was different, I don't know what would have happened.
Those are kind of life experience that I feel like I'm at this point with my kids that I'm like, God, I need to make them do some things like this, because I remember one time, this is very same principle. My dad, we had a jet ski when I was growing up, and I took my friends on the jet ski, and I came back. My dad goes, you need to write an income statement on what it costs to operate the jet ski. I'm like 15. I'm like, why are we doing this? So I had to write out all everything and all that stuff. And then at the end of it, he was like, okay, you need to charge your friends $25. I was like, dude, this is supposed to be recreation, and it was for me, I was like, God, you're being such a jerk right now. But I look back on that, I'm like, well, I kind of really learned how to like underwrite something. Like, what does this really take? And same thing you had to learn at a young age, how to like budget and like actually, because
and that's your strength now.
Yeah,
and it always has been. I always come to you for those financial planning questions.
Yeah. So okay, but that was just something to keep going.
So that's the New York piece, the kind of childhood blessing there, despite the passing of our father, who stays with us, Yeah. But after that, we moved to, we made a move to Buffalo, New York for 3 years because my brother-in-law and sister moved there for his education and the grandkids, and mom wanted to be with them. So we said, yeah, why not? Let's make a change.
Yeah.
Let's take a chance. Let's leave this small town. That's another big piece, is that willingness to accept change and move and adapt. Because, I went back home and I love my hometown. I respect everybody there, and they all made life beautiful. And sometimes maybe they're the ones who made the right choice because they didn't have to go anywhere. They have all their families. They didn't have to travel all around the world and find something special that maybe they're in search of, right? But they remained, and they're there. And that same thing's going to happen to all of us in the end, right?
Yeah.
But they're happy too.
Yeah.
But we chose a different path, and we made a lot of moves. We moved from Olean to Buffalo, and then Buffalo to Arizona. He got a job out there at Hughes Aircraft, my brother-in-law, and he was kind of like a father figure.
Yeah.
A young man, but very, very strong, intelligent, and he's the president of a major defense contractor in Washington, D.C.
Yeah.
He'll be retiring this year after like a 40-year career in defense. And
so you moved to Arizona as well?
I moved to Arizona. My mom's like, hey, look at this. I went to visit your sister. Look at this brand new apartment complex. They have a tennis court and pools and jacuzzis and mountains. I'm like, this is quite different than Buffalo, New York, You
moved from Buffalo, New York to Arizona.
Right.
I saw this post on Twitter one time, and it says, you're a pioneer and settler. You moved to Buffalo, New York. Yeah. You made it through one winter, and then you stayed. Why?
That's right.
To all the way to Arizona. So
I loved Arizona, maybe more than anywhere I've ever lived. It was just the desert, the character of the desert, the seasons, that time of life, driving, freedom. We just get in the car and drive to Mexico at the age of 16, 17, 18, go to Puerto Penasco, Rocky Point. Yeah. And me and my friends, we had a lot of freedom. It was a great experience. I really didn't want to leave there so easily. And then after college at the University of Arizona, studied marketing and business. And, at that time I was working at the Foot Locker at the age of 16 to 18, waiting tables at night in the Mexican restaurant and working in the days at Foot Locker and going to college. And it was a great time. And the rest of the family moved on to Texas. Now he got a job with E-Systems. And they're like, oh, we're moving to Dallas. I'm like, I'm going to stay here, finish school, and see what happens after college. And so I stayed, enjoyed it, graduated, got some job offers, and was kind of excited, hey, now things are starting to happen. I can go and buy a home or settle down or maybe start a family. I was 21. And everybody said, yeah, go for that, do that. Everybody I talked to. Yeah. And in the end, I said, you know what? I'm not going to do it. I'm not going to stay here. I took everybody's opinion, but it didn't make sense to me that I spent all my life studying with my nose focused, to what I was doing. And I felt like I really want to see what's happening out there in the world. Yeah. And I felt that it was the best decision I ever made. Even though people told me, be careful, the economy's bad, you have a good job offer, be thankful, etc., be safe. And I said, you know what? I have my education, I have my experience, I have my drive. Even if I have to come back, take a job for fraction of what was offered to me, I could regain, the loss.
Yeah. You're young. You can take the risk, right?
Yeah. So I had a little business on campus where I started. I wasn't the best student. I'd get like some B's and C's and maybe A's if I worked really hard. Mm-hmm. But some classes I had to study really hard for. And I said, in my junior and senior year in college, I really wanted to do better. I really wanted to improve my grades from where they were. And I said, I started making these really organized study guides for myself for sociology and anthropology and psychology and marketing and economics, where some of the books and material was so old you could hardly read it.
Yeah.
And kids were having a hard time with this particular article, and the class had 300 students in it. So I said to myself, I stayed up, I studied, I made these beautiful notes, and I thought to myself, man, I can share these notes with all 300 students.
Yeah.
I'm just going to charge them for what like a high price of copying would be. Mm-hmm. So they can't go reproduce and give to their friends.
Yeah.
So I asked the professor, I said, do you mind if I share these notes and make copies for all these students who were complaining about how difficult it was to read that article you gave us? And he said, no problem, go for it. Yeah. So I priced it like $1.50. I think it was $1.50 or $3 for one packet. And if they bought more, then they could get a lower price and then they could give to their friends. Yeah. So it was a successful business, Desert Print Productions. and I sold that sociology class. It was successful. Some people were like, how come you can do this? And this has to be illegal. And I'm going to get you in trouble. I'm like, hey, I asked permission. The teacher let me. Yeah. I saw an opportunity. I took it. Go ahead. If I'm doing wrong and the dean has a problem, just let me know and I'll stop, right? And so I kept doing it for all my other classes. It helped my grades grow. It gave me some extra income, and I sold the business for very nominal money. Yeah. But all the notes were there. I just passed them on to another student, and I took that money and I said, I'm going to go travel. So I traveled after graduation for about 4 months in Europe. And then I ran out of money. Yeah. I was in Greece, and I had just enough money to buy me a one-way ticket somewhere, not too far away. And I said, man, I have all these relatives and people here in Lebanon. Yeah. The war just finished, the worst wars. In 1989, it was a lot of the Christian militias were killing each other, brothers from the same family. And there was no electricity. The country didn't have like communication. The phone lines were very inconsistent. Electricity, transportation, the airport, everything was very down. Mm-hmm. And all my family have always had this fear. My aunts living in New York, and they never wanted to go back home because they were always scared of what they saw on the media. And I said to myself, I have this money. I can buy a one-way ticket on Middle East Airlines from Athens to Beirut on July 17th of 2001. What was it? No, it was 1992, the summer of 1992. And I arrived to Beirut International Airport, and I didn't have money for my taxi. And I didn't know where to go because I couldn't contact my mother's family. We just knew they left the village because the village was destroyed by other folks there and burned in 1988, and they all had to flee to the city. And we heard that they had this bakery in one part of town. I said, I think I could find them. But the one address I remembered was the name of the street of my brother-in-law's home, Shara Tumarza. And I just got in the taxi, and I told the taxi, take me to Shara Tumarza, the house of Victor Farah. And the taxi driver took me there. He starts going down the street. Everybody's outside on a Saturday playing backgammon and on the shopping in the streets. And he's asking. Finally, we find the house. I go up there. And I had to ask for my my brother-in-law's father to pay for my taxi, because I didn't have that money. But I stayed there, and they took me in for a few days. And then I found my cousins and my uncles, and it was an amazing time for me to see them again because my mom took us there when we were in 1980 but we really didn't connect as much. But I always wanted to go back and meet them.
That's kind of crazy to think you did all that without a cell phone.
Right.
You know?
Right. Maps and, yeah.
You just had a street.
Right, right.
Hey, take me to the street.
I swear. I mean, it sounds exaggerated, but I promise you, it's all, per the book.
Yeah.
And then for 2 months, I stayed with them. Mm-hmm. And I saw kind of what they were going through. And I admired a lot because they didn't have the opportunity for education. Right. None of them. But they were all very successful, even after being born in the war, living through the war all their life. They were able to be happy, fun, friendly, and everybody had their own business. And I saw them, and I was like, "Wow, this is something, man." I just took it in anyway, right? I still came. I enjoyed the time. I came back home, and I said, "Okay, now it's time to get to work." I studied. I need to find a job, make some money, figure out what I'm going to do with life. So to make a long story short, that 10-year period, I worked at Chase Bank as a loan officer. Mm-hmm. I worked with American Spirit Insurance, selling property and casualty insurance, inspecting homes, going into homes of families in East Texas and, Rockwall and Tyler, and they invite you in for dinner and offer you barbecue and tell you their life story. And I learned a lot from that job and those experiences. Yeah. Seeing the way people live and their values, and you see these all different type in the spectrum. Yeah. And how people would manage their home and their life and their expenses and their family and their kids. And for a young kid who really never saw that, it was quite the opportunity to get into so many homes. Yeah. And see how people are living.
The real world.
And what they're doing. And all their demographics and specifics based on insurance, right? Yeah. So, and you could draw some conclusions, of what you saw. And then I went on, it seemed every 2 years I'd work, save 60, 70% of my income. I was staying with my mother. She had a, 1-bedroom apartment in Rockwall. And I would sleep on the couch I stay with my sister sometimes. But I would want to save my money. Mm-hmm. And I was okay. I was comfortable. And I just wanted to save my money because I knew one day I wanted to do something with it. And I didn't really get up to big numbers, but it could always allow me the freedom to travel. So I'd leave every 2 years and try something. Yeah. I'd buy and sell cars in the nighttime after my job at the auctions. And then I would do all kind of crazy stuff. Like I'd go down to Mexico and get a truckload of blankets and give them to my nieces and nephews. And on Saturday, take them and sell blankets and things we'd bring in just to make a little bit extra money. Yeah. And then more job opportunities came with probably one of the best experiences, as you mentioned earlier, the documentary. Yeah. In 1995, I was working at the bank. And fortunately, it was the only job in my life I was ever let go. Yeah. And I was let go, I think, for a couple of different reasons. And this is like a really interesting lesson. Yeah. I'm a very open person. Anybody knows me, maybe I say too much, too transparent, too open with everything. And I just found that I never lost from that. I only gained people's trust, and people know where I stand. And so in the bank, I was the same way. Yeah. And I think kind of independently, it was a bit too structured there, let's say. Right. All the rules and all the things.
All the corporate
it was
part of it.
I just knew that I didn't fit in. Yeah. If you came to open a bank account with me and I had a good feeling about you, but you only had one form of ID instead of two, I would say, you know what, look at this guy. He's got A, B, C, D. And I'd make my own decision whether I want to open your bank account. Just because you didn't have a library card or something, it's not going to change my mind. So I'd open up your account. Right? And so that wasn't good for the bank. They needed that library card. So not that I'm criminal, but sometimes you have to use your judgment. Yeah. And I think it's that mind frame that allows entrepreneurs to step outside the box, do things that are not normal, not wait, academically. Yeah. Also, we're not always the brightest and the straight A students on the, magna cum laude.
No.
Sometimes we just roll that way,
Yeah.
and there's a certain gift in each skill set with each person, and those are the things we're dealt.
Yeah.
I didn't have the ability to ask for the library card. I felt it would not be right.
Yeah.
So anyway, I had to figure out what to do.
Yeah.
And I had about 20 grand saved up, not a lot. And I said, what am I going to do now? So every time I've traveled to Lebanon, people would ask me, they say, what do you go over there for? What's over there? What do you do?
Yeah.
Are you involved with something or, And I'm like, something, if you could only see some of the things that I see in Lebanon, it would blow your mind. You see nothing but religious strife, war, political problems, and you associate so much from the media. And those things are true.
Yeah.
Those things are true. I'm not saying they're not. But it depends what you want to put your focus on.
Sure.
You want to look at the crap, you can point your camera in this direction.
Yeah.
If you want to look at the good things in Jeremy or in Isabella or in Lebanon, you can point the camera on her best part or your best part.
Yeah.
And that's what I saw in Lebanon. That's typically how I see everyone and everything. I choose because that's my choice.
Right.
Whether I want to look at what's wrong with you or look what's right with you.
Yeah.
And I think that's also very critical in business because you have to be optimistic.
Yeah.
And if you think negative, then you'll bring negative. And really, that's a blessing. I know it's hard many times for people to do that, but that was my choice. That's what I saw in Lebanon. Maybe I'm a little bit crazy. And even the Lebanese, and people say, what do you're from Dallas, Texas.
Yeah.
And why would you leave a job at a bank or, leave this opportunity to come and do this? Well, for me, it was probably even this business I'm running now.
Yeah.
Maybe this little documentary thing that I did was just as rewarding intrinsically, if not greater, than a 23-year span of running a company. Because as a kid, Mom is so proud. She came here in 1959 to the U.S. She's more American than anyone. She's very patriotic of this country.
Yeah.
It'd blow your mind more than anybody I've ever met. But she's very proud of her country as well. And she instilled that into us, but we could never see anything good about it. Like, Mom, what are you talking about?
Yeah.
I look in a book in the library, I look in this. We don't see anything about what you're talking about.
Yeah.
So I said, how cool would it be if I could take this little money, hire a cameraman, reach out to corporations in Lebanon, write them, tell them what I'm going to do, see if they want to get involved.
Yeah.
Go do it. Shoot all the film over 6 months, edit it, bring it back to the U.S. And if I can just break even and do this, I will be okay. It'll be a great feeling to bring something positive to where I'm from, to share our ancestry with as far as I could reach it.
Yeah.
So Jeremy, I'll tell you, man, I never dreamt. My goal was to sell 1,000 copies of this video cassette, which was called The Beauty of Lebanon. It's called Sharfuna, which means honor us with your visit, The Beauty of Lebanon. And it was a 30-minute travel film that we shot I think about 60 hours from the north to south, east to west, of everything in Lebanon. And I wrote 6 businesses. The bank, I wrote Middle East Airlines, the Ministry of Tourism, food companies. I said, this is what I'm going to do. This is who I am. This is what's going to happen. Yeah. If you'd like to play a part, we'll include your company in this video, and you could be a partner in this kind of honorable work. Yeah. Nobody answered until my plane landed on Middle East Airlines in Beirut. It was about October of 96. And Middle East Airlines called from the New York office, and they said, we would like you to come to our headquarters in Beirut, and we're going to talk to you, and we're ready to help you. It wasn't that much that I was asking for them. I just wanted their involvement, their stamp of association to give credibility to the project, because they're the national airline, the only airline.
Yeah, it's like American Airlines here. So
yes, no, they are the only airline.
Yeah,
and then so
no options.
Yeah, it's like the national airline, and they got me hooked up with the Department of Tourism. And all of a sudden, they made me into this American filmmaker, which I never did anything like that. But I had the idea, and that's it. I had the idea, and I was ready to do it.
You were doing it with or without them.
Exactly, exactly. I didn't need their money. I just wanted their credibility to kind of make it be more successful. Yeah. So I got there. They put a liaison with me for the whole trip. I interacted with the Department of Tourism, licenses for filming, all kind of fun stuff. And then after it was done, I brought it back to the U.S. and I sent it to all the Maronite Catholic churches across the United States. I wrote a letter to the bishop in New York. I said, this is who I am. This is what I did. Here's a copy of the film. If you give your blessing, I'm going to ship 50 copies to every church, one of the 50 churches, to the youth organizations that I was once a part of. And the kids are going to sell it and make money for the church.
Yeah.
And the bishop said, go for it. I love it. Give me 50 copies extra,
Yeah.
So we shipped him 100 copies, and he said, go ahead. So I shipped 50 copies to all those people. It was over 2,500. I already exceeded my break even, for the production cost.
Yeah.
And once that happened, people started to see it, and they started to order more. And then somebody told me, you need to come to Washington, D.C. They had all kind of senators and congressmen and Donna Shalala and all these people, and Abrams and Rahal, all these different senators. I forget which states they're from now, but they were all in D.C. And this was 30 years ago almost. And I got in my car and I drove in August of 97 straight to Washington. My brother was living there. I stayed with him. And I spent a month in Washington promoting it with the American Task Force for Lebanon, which was a political lobbyist group with all these other people. The Renee Mawad Foundation, who's like a nonprofit as well. And then I said, if this works here, it's probably going to work everywhere.
Yeah.
So then I went back to Dallas and I said, okay, I'm going to go to every country in the world that has a Lebanese diaspora in the millions. Like in Brazil, they have 7 million Lebanese that left. Today, there are 7 million Lebanese, not direct, like third generation. They're like me,
Yeah.
And they are curious. They remain in touch with their culture. And so that's the unique thing about it.
Yeah.
They all are hungry and thirsty to see more about their mother and father's homeland.
Yeah.
So I started with Montreal, Canada. I did that for 30 days, and I got on the media, the TV channels, the newspapers, going to churches, mosques, grocery stores, and then I would sell the rights to the video in that country for somebody to keep selling.
Yeah.
And then I went to Venezuela, Caracas, Venezuela. Then I went to Mexico City. Then I went to Sydney, Australia. And then I went to Rio and Sao Paulo, where the biggest population was. And then I took it finally, after 2 years of doing that and selling the video and the rights in those countries, I took it to Lebanon.
Yeah.
And people say, well, what are you going to do? Go sell a cassette about Lebanon to the Lebanese? No. All those 12 million immigrants travel to Lebanon in the summer.
Yeah.
And that's the bloodline of their economy right now, is these successful Lebanese living abroad going there. So basically I put it in the airport duty-free shop and the museum and all the touristic sites. And then they put it on the TV. Okay, and like all these TV talk shows, morning talk shows, I would go on and talk, So I was like, man, I can't believe this is happening. I'm actually going to go and have an interview on national TV in Lebanon in Arabic. I learned how to speak Arabic after the age of 21, so I'm fluent in Arabic. I don't read or write, but I can speak fluently.
Yeah.
And so I did that, and then all of a sudden people start calling from the viewers. And they started inviting me. Hey, I want to talk to you. I want to meet you. I have this project, or I want you to do this, or can you help me with that? And this one guy called me. This is another kind of life-changing moment for me. And I know I'm probably going on too long with all these things.
This is cool.
But you can
Keep going.
see, when I talk about generation trade, I may not get as excited.
Yeah.
And you can feel from the excitement when people tell a story about their passion, right?
Yeah.
This is something. But it all translates to the final current last 23 years.
Yeah.
And it gives you an idea of the impact and influence and role models,
Yeah.
But this guy, he just told me to come to his office. He didn't give me any details. And I'm like, okay, who is this guy? And his name was Pierre Abu Khatir. And he grew up in very similar circumstances as myself.
Mm-hmm.
And he went to college at the American University of Beirut. Then he moved to Taiwan at a young age. He worked for Trans-Mediterranean Airways. And then he started his own Globe Express services, a global freight forwarding NVO selling ocean cargo space to U.S. importers, Trans-Pacific.
Okay.
And he grew very large, became extremely wealthy. He was about 70 years old. His health wasn't good. He didn't have any children. And he moved back to Lebanon. And he just sat there for years as he knew that his health was declining.
Mm-hmm.
And he started inviting and calling on all the people in his country and community to influence them and give them and donate. Extremely generous human being.
Mm-hmm.
He built children's hospitals at the American University of Beirut. He's probably one of the largest donors for the St. Jude in Tennessee, the Mayo Clinic, and girls' schools in China.
Mm-hmm.
Just everything he had, he gave away. And he called me like nothing.
Yeah.
And he told me, laughing, whatever you want to do, I'm here to support you.
Oh, cool.
You tell me what movie, what you want to do, what's your next project, and I'm going to give you what you need. And I told him, Mr. Pierre, I'm not a filmmaker. I just did this once as a kind of song to sing.
Yeah.
Something kind of a dream come true. I did what I'm going to do. It wasn't in the production. It was in the distribution, the hard work.
Yeah.
Getting out to every community around the world, not knowing anybody in those countries, and landing, figuring out how to translate subtitles and manufacture the cassette and distribute the cassette. And that's all the hard work.
Yeah.
It's done. And I'm not doing it again. I said, if you want to donate some of these cassettes across the libraries to students like I used to search for in the library, good things about our, mother's homeland.
Yeah.
I'd love you to do that.
Yeah.
So he picked up the phone, his North Carolina office. We shipped them a large number of cassettes. He wrote me a check and he said, "Thank you very much. Goodbye." And then he stayed in touch a couple times, trying to help me and help my project.
Yeah.
Introducing me to very high-level politicians in Lebanon to see if they would also have interest.
Yeah.
And that was quite humbling. And so after all of that was done, I came back to Texas and said, "Okay, what's next? I'm done." So
so you were selling these cassettes through all the churches and all that stuff. So you were making some money. So you're kind of just living through
correct.
this. And how long was this period?
2.5 years,
Okay.
6-month production, 2 years selling.
Okay.
Yeah. And so I didn't get rich off it, or by any means, but I paid for all the travel. I did save some money. And then it was like, okay, come back and what am I going to do? Lo and behold, I go and visit a friend. It was like a Memorial Day or something. We were going to take a boat with some friends out on Lake Louisville.
Yeah.
And this was like several months later. And who's sitting in the room with us, and one of my friends' school friends, was the nephew of Pierre, Ziad Corben, who lives in Hong Kong, and he was the CEO of the company at that point. And they wanted to start a Dallas sales office. And he just forgot that I was in Dallas.
Yeah.
And then he calls his uncle. He tells him, I'm sitting here with the guy that, you told me about, and Andre. And Pierre told him, hire him, offer him the job as the operations manager in Dallas and the sales, to start up the sales office in Dallas, selling ocean freight. I mean, what, right?
Yeah.
It's crazy stories. And so
you just go on a boat one weekend and you're connected all the way back across the world like that.
That's the crazy thing about the community. That's the reason I think I love it so much is no matter where you land on a plane in the world, the people would welcome you, take you in, and just treat you like they're your son, And so anyway, I accept a job. I go work for them for 6 months in Dallas, hire people, and then they say, hey, we want to move you to North Carolina as the operations manager in our North Carolina office. I'm like, man, why do you want, I've just been with you, I just started. You have people there for 15 years working in this office, and you want me to go and be the operations manager? I said, I don't know this industry.
Yeah.
And they said, well, you can learn it, and we know you have the ability to do it. I went there. I worked in the operation. I thought I'd be there for the rest of my life. I loved the company, the people. I love North Carolina.
Yeah.
Until they really wanted me to make some big changes with the staff there. And it was I didn't believe in it.
Yeah.
I thought that the employees they had were good. They just needed direction, training, managing. They were good people that could do a good job.
Yeah.
And I didn't believe that was the right approach, to let them all go, And they wanted to bring younger generation of people and stuff in. And I just had a hard time with it personally. Maybe they were right.
Yeah.
But I just would wake up with the worst feeling.
Yeah.
And I said, I can't do this for more than a week. So I told my boss, I said, look, I'm going to take a minute to think. I'm going to just get in my car and drive. And at that point, I decided, I said, I see these importers that I'm calling on, and I like what they do, and I think I can do it.
Yeah.
And I don't care if I move back to Dallas, and I don't mind if I can make $1,000 a month. I promise you. With $1,000, I knew that I could live. I don't have any debt. I could survive. And the next year, I knew I'd make $2,000, and I'd do better, right? I wouldn't go backwards. I'd go forwards. So I said I could start with at least this, and I know I can hit it. And that was a key reckoning.
Yeah.
When you draw that break even, that risk analysis, do I go forward? The what if.
Right.
Important in every business, right? So I came back to Texas, and I felt in a way a little bit down. I felt like, man, you start these jobs, you quit them every 2 years. What's up? Are you really going to do anything in your life? I was 30 years old.
Yeah.
I said, okay, I knew I had my education. I had these 4 or 5 jobs, things that I've done. I was proud of that documentary, but I was 30 years old and I really didn't have much. And most of my friends and family, they married so young and they're,
having kids
blowing and going, right?
Mm-hmm.
But I felt that those experiences at that 10-year period, they were very valuable to learn, observe, grow, think, and do all those things that people typically do when they're 60.
Yeah.
Reflect inside and answer all those questions that need to be reckoned with and answered. And people would even say you're going through a midlife crisis and you're 25.
Yeah.
But it was different approach. It was a different approach. But again, a very turning point in life. So I ended up taking the decision to just go to Asia, go to the Canton Fair, where I knew all the products were represented. Everything made in the world or made in China in Asia was made there in different phases. And I didn't know what to buy. I thought I was going to do something like involving like maybe souvenirs. I'm like, man, the $10 mug, that must cost $1. I can travel and sell mugs in Rio. That was my intention. So I went there. So I'm going to find something. I got a little cash. I can buy something. I'll bring it back, and I know I'll find a home for it.
Yeah.
And I got there, and I found a product, but it was actually something I was going to put all my money on. And it didn't work. Yeah. Okay. It failed horribly. And it was actually, I don't want to go into too much detail about it, but it was a machine.
Yeah.
Like, when you fly in the airplane, they bring you that hot towel.
Yeah.
And you clean your face. I'm like, oh man, this is like awesome. I love that feeling. I was like, oh man, this is great. They had a machine that would produce those hot towels for you. And I was like, man, I could sell these to Cisco Food, to the sushi restaurants, to the dental clinics, to the orthodontic clinic, to the Neiman Marcus makeup counter. I could sell it everywhere. I'm going to be rich. So I would buy a whole container.
Yeah.
But I have a week left in China, and I'm looking at stuff in the show. And I said, and people are saying, okay, do you want to ship it by ocean or by air?
Yeah.
I was like, oh man, wait a second. And they'll ask me if I want samples of different things, like luggage and sporting goods and lighting. I was still open for anything. And then I said, man, maybe I can go back to that company and cancel my order. I put all my money in that container.
Yeah.
And I can cancel my order and just ask for one sample of each 5 machine and air freight it. Lose money on the air freight, $1,000, know? And I did that. In the end, I couldn't give those machines away. I gave one to a friend. He asked me to come pick it up. I swear.
I guess he didn't like the hot towel, huh?
No, he couldn't do anything with it. Even the Hank Haney Golf, I put one there that you put quarters in. Yeah. Pick it up.
Yeah.
And so I was like, all right, what do I do now? So anyway, I was fortunate enough to see this one lady selling these dining sets. They were $40, $39 to $57 each for 4-piece and 7-piece dining sets, glass tops with metal bases. And I'm like, man, I just bought one of these for my apartment, when I was living in Dallas. And I paid hundreds of dollars for it. So I think I could sell it. Even if I sell for $100, I'm not going to lose my money.
Yeah.
So my money's safe here. So I bought those dining sets and I came back and I rented a public storage unit, $1 for the first month, right? The first month is $1.
Yeah.
The first 30 days, right?
Yeah.
And I sold my Jeep Cherokee. I bought a van from the city of Plano for $1,100 from the municipal works.
Yeah.
And I said, okay, I'm in business. The container's on the way. Nothing's sold. I got my storage, lined up. I got my van. Mm-hmm. So now I made a catalog with 4 items. Yeah. D1 through 4. And I go to stores. I say, would you like to buy? And they say, well, the price is good, but no, I think we're okay. We have these other people we buy from. We don't need any new supplier. I said, well, do you mind if I come and set it up for you tomorrow? No, I was pre-selling them. Yeah. So I did sell many. I sold maybe a third of the container before it arrived. Mm-hmm. And I said, I guarantee the people, I didn't even see the goods. Yeah. The actual goods, just the samples. So they'd come in, I'd deliver them. It was exciting to receive that first container. And if people didn't want to buy from me, I would say, hey, I'll come in here, I'll set everything up in your store, bring you lunch, and you pay me when they sell. Yeah. And they're like, okay. So they were happy. Yeah. And so they liked the idea because it was very convenient for them.
Low risk.
Low risk. Yeah. And then next thing I know, they're calling me, hey, I need 5 sets delivered tomorrow. Yeah. And I'm sitting there. I didn't have an office. I didn't have expenses. So
you had a van.
I had a van. I'd sit by the pool at the apartment complex waiting for the phone to ring. And then I'd jump in the van, go pick it up. And so things grew. And then I had 5 storage units and maybe 2 or 3 containers a month. And then the customers started telling me, hey, you need to go to Brazil and find these bunk beds. Nobody can keep them in stock. And I had more time than money. And I love travel. Yeah. So I started reaching out to the Brazilian consulate, asking for like trade references and lining me up with factories. And then I started calling exhibitors, people who plan furniture shows. Mm-hmm. And a girl answered the phone, and she didn't speak English, so she got another girl on the line. And the girl came out, and I told her, I said, hey, look, I'm in Dallas, Texas. I'm a furniture importer. I know you have a show that you organize. I would like to ask you first, before I come to Brazil, for you to see all the companies in your show if they sell this specific item. So she took about 2 weeks. She worked on it, and then she came back and said, I'm sorry, we don't have that type of cheap product. We sell to Europe.
Yeah.
And I said, okay, well, it's okay. I found it through the consulate guy, Ricardo Dietz, and I'm already in the works with him. And so she found some other things there that I wanted to see, some sofas, that I thought could work for us. And I told her, I said, you know what? I want to come down there and I want to meet you. And we kind of developed a relationship, and I was in my 30s and single. And, we started talking on the phone during those 2-3 weeks, and we kind of took a liking to each other. And I said, I could tell that this girl was a sweet girl.
Yeah.
And so I ended up flying down there to meet Ricardo Dietz and to meet Susanna.
Yeah.
And she ended up being my wife.
Yeah.
So we ended up, getting married after several years, of her coming here and me going down there several times. And, so you never know how fate holds itself. And, it's been 17 years now, and we still travel to Brazil and do business there. And she helps me with the business. She does the accounting and wires and payroll and different things. But that was the biggest blessing, I would say.
Yeah.
And then after, so where are we now?
So you had 5 storage units.
Yes.
Did you secure the bunk beds though at that point?
I did, but they didn't really work out. The quality wasn't great.
So you're in 5 storage units. You're like, oh, I can expand for $1 a month.
Right. But now it's taken a lot of time, and I would dig through those units. Like if somebody wanted a product in the back and it's stacked high,
very inefficient.
It was hell. I mean, in the hot 104-degree weather, climbing inside that storage unit. I did that for about 1.5 years.
Okay.
And then I leased at Prologis, Richardson and Arapahoe Road, near International.
How many square feet did you lease for your first
5,000 square feet.
Okay.
And it had one dock, and I was in heaven. Yeah. I was like, wow, this is like, it had an office with air conditioning.
This is real now.
Yeah. And it was great. Rent was affordable. I want to say they did like a scaling for 3 years, a stage step, $1,700, $2,000, $2,100. And it was all very in line with my expenses. Yeah. And it was near a little house that I bought. We could walk to work even, small little fixer-upper there in Richardson. And then quickly after a couple years, I started importing some bedrooms from Italy, and that company got really behind me, and they wanted to help me grow and give me product and credit terms and this and that. So I needed 10,000 feet down the road, like 2 years later, maybe 1.5 years, 2 years. So I expanded to that, renting. And then John Gardner and Ian Russell lined out 17 buildings as we ran out of space, and we went toured them. And I saw the one on Majesty, 1211 Majesty. And it was 30,000 square feet, and I thought it was insane.
Yeah.
30,000 square feet, and to buy a building for, I don't know how much it was, maybe it was $890,000. Yeah. Something like that. And, and all of a sudden I was like, wow, this is real. I think it was after maybe 6 years of being in business, and 5 or 6 years. And then one day, this guy named Jeremy Mercer comes walking in the door, right?
Yeah.
And you changed my life, brother.
Yeah.
And you showed me, I thought I was looking for something much smaller. And we took a long time looking at many properties. And I was going to buy that one near the Galleria for like $110 a foot, and I had to get some money from family because I thought, wow, it had 17 rentable units. I could be a landlord, rent, and use a 60 or 80,000 square foot warehouse that didn't have as many dock doors or land or storage. And then one morning you called me and said, hey, I got this building to show you for $20 a foot.
Yeah.
And we went out there and it was filled with black dust from this metal operation and pallet manufacturing.
Yeah, big pallet company.
Yeah, at 2101 Union Bower, which is our current home.
Yeah.
And 150,000 square feet, which was, 5 times what we had.
Yeah.
But the sensibility and affordability and ease, it was perfect for us. 8 acres, 20 dock doors. Matter of fact, I couldn't use all the 150 feet, so I thought I could still be a landlord, use 50,000 or 100,000, and rent the other 50.
Mm-hmm.
So I think you found me Pachugo ice cream to rent for $2,000 a month, dead storage. Mm-hmm. And I was like, man, that just doesn't sound right.
Yeah.
You know, even though it would have been good, decent little income.
Yeah.
And I said, what can I do here with this extra space? So I said, it'd be really nice to diversify and manufacture something in this city. Mm-hmm. And I love going to factories in Asia and seeing, very exciting for me to tour factories, probably one of the things I love to do most.
Yeah, I bet that is
seeing
neat.
all the action and production and planning and samples and design. And it's really energetic. Yeah. You know, really energizing to see that. And I said, you know, even if we just produce a few pieces, it's better than $2,000 a month.
Yeah.
So we started Simon Bedding, manufacturing mattresses.
Yep.
And I was lucky to find the gentleman, Hector Sandoval, who just got let go from a very large Corsicana Bedding subsidiary. Mm-hmm. They closed down in Carrollton. And he was ready to work. And he was excited and stayed in touch with me and convinced me that, and made me confident that he would be reliable and successful in this venture. And he's the man. You know, he's been in 25 years and he just flew on his own. He built some tables, got a nail gun, bought some spring openers, a couple old quilting machine. They look like from the 1800s, but they worked. Yeah. And some sewing machines. And I said, Hector, you just stay here and make me 10 matches a day and we're good. Yeah. And the next thing you know, our customers buying the furniture. Mm-hmm. Perfect synergy on the reps wanted it, the stores wanted it. It moved on the same trucks, separate company, different accounting, 2 separate entities in the same building, using the same resources. And it was a perfect kind of match. And so it's been 10 years we've been manufacturing and growing in the mattress business and focusing not so much on volume, but on really increasing our tailoring, quality, design, adding a lot of value to the mattresses so that our customers, makes it hard for our customers not to get excited. Yeah. Because it's really just extra business. We really don't, it kind of rides on the, tails of GT. Yeah. But we can afford to take our time the way we did with GT. Mm-hmm. But something good is being grown there. And we're going slow with both companies, actually. Yeah. And there's a lot of potential to scale both companies tremendously. There's different ways of thinking about growth. Yeah. And some people just want to be number one in their field. And I'm sorry, but that's not me. Yeah. For me, the measure is different. Yeah. It's more balanced. And if you asked me 5 and 10, 15, and even 20 years ago, I never would have dreamt that the business would keep growing. So it seems that whenever we think we're not really idle, but maybe we're not growing right now. We're working and achieving many things during a time where we don't see a lot of growth sales-wise, but we see a lot of growth in other measures. Relations with the customers, technology, website, catalog, vendor relations, cash, operations, logistics, warehouse, trucking, not operations, processes.
Yeah.
All of those things, we seem sometime to need a slower time to focus on those so that when the demand comes, we're prepared to serve it properly without losing our customers or having bad service.
That's a, process. It's, when I think we're guilty of this, but sometimes when it gets really busy, you sometimes fall out of process. So it is good for those times to breathe, to be like, oh, man, we kind of screwed that up. Like, why did we screw that up? Well, we screwed it up because we fell out of our process. Right. You know what I mean? So it's, you're kind of always honing that and tweaking that. And so I think even though you might be at a point in your business where it's like, hey, this is comfortable and we don't have to do anything, there's always something to work on,
Right.
Right. So, but one thing I want to touch on, and this is something that I learned, and it's kind of funny, I'm sitting there thinking this right now, we're speaking of everything, we're sitting on a generation trade table right now.
Yes, it's the boulder.
And but when we were looking for your building, we were you're in 30,000 feet, and we were looking for like 50 to 60,000 feet.
Right.
And one of the best lessons I learned in my real estate career came out of this was there was a building you found. And man, there's nothing that makes you feel worse as a broker is when your client finds a building that fits them that you didn't find, And so I was like, I don't know how I missed that. And so anyways, what made it even more upsetting was you're like, hey, check on this building. And I'm like, how did I miss this? So I check on the building. It's already been agreed to, fixing to go under contract. And this was that building in Carrollton. I don't know if you remember this building. We went and drove it, and you were like, and then so I was like, okay, well, I'll get the info on it. And I remember I had to come back to your office and sit down. I was like, hey, it's under contract. And I was very upset with myself. I was very just like, I failed here, I screwed this up, and I was so mad at myself. And you were just looking at me like, it's under contract? I'm like, yeah. And you're like, so we can't get it? Like there's no, and I'm just, like you kind of asked me the same question like 3 different ways. And I was just like, God, I'm just dying on the inside. And, but what I did is I was like, yeah, no, it's under contract. It's no big deal. Like, so what I learned in that situation was, if I would have made a big deal out of it, you would have made a big deal out of it. But I was just like I was like, I gotta stay real cool through this because I kind of screwed this up. I don't want to get fired, And so I was just like, yeah, it's under contract. And then you were like, oh, okay. But I feel like there's a lot of times in situations now that I learned that lesson is if you make a big deal out of something, the other party will make a big deal out of something as well.
Right.
And so I've used that a lot in situations where I'm like, okay, well, is this really that big of a, do I need to make that big of a deal of it? Or do I need to, and so that was like very important lesson I learned is how, because there's a saying that people respond in kind, you know?
Yes.
So, if someone gets very aggressive with you, you're going to get very aggressive with them. And then vice versa, on the flip side of that, if you're very, accommodating for someone, then, they'll work with things for you. But that was a big lesson I learned in that transaction. And then when we were negotiating on Union Bower, I remember I was like, God, this, this is, we're negotiating that deal. And I remember, I think we were sitting in Freshella, which is our favorite little restaurant.
Right.
And we're sitting there and I was like, we were like $50,000 apart. And I was like, Andre, they want, 2-3. And you're like,
so you're ready to confront the difficulty. I'm sorry.
So I was like, Andre, they want 2-3. And you're like, I was like, this is it. And they got another offer they're telling me. And you're like, well, I want to pay $2,250,000. I was like, I'm not going to lose this deal over $50,000. And I just had to look at you and I said, well, you got to be willing to lose in order to win. You go, I'm willing to lose. I was like, damn it, that sounds like that didn't work. My line didn't work on you. And, I was like, all right, man. And I sent it back to them. I was like, nope, that's all we're paying. They go, all right, you got it. And I was like, wow. I was like, sweet.
Oh.
So that was two really cool things I learned on that transaction. And I thought it was really neat how excited you got about the building, because the building, I mean, it was a pallet building, and
Right.
a lot of industrial guys listen to this podcast, and everybody knows a pallet company beats the hell out of a building. I mean, the metal's all smashed everywhere, all this stuff, but you were like, hey, I can start in this corner, and I can do some paint, and I can do this, like it.
Right.
It turned into this big project for you, and you ended up going from when we were looking for 50,000 feet to 150,000 feet. And golly, I'd say in 2 years, you had that thing full. Like
That's right. That's right.
So anyways, those are some just really interesting things that really, that helped me in my career in that transaction. So,
and I think during that transaction, one thing happened that solidified not only the relationship that we have, but the incredible trust that I put in you for the recent investments that we've done together.
Yeah.
With my eyes closed.
Yeah.
There was a mistake that was made on the paperwork and the closing regarding taxes.
Yeah.
That I was not aware of. Not a huge mistake.
Yeah.
But a mistake, maybe it was a few $1,000s.
Yeah.
And I learned about that mistake. I can't remember when and how after we closed and I was in the building. And I was prepared to go and pay it.
Yeah.
But I told you about it, and you picked me up in your car and you drove me over to the city of Irving and pulled out your checkbook, and you wrote the check to the city for the thousands of dollars
that's right.
The mistake was made. And in a very, like you said, calm, without any question or doubt or hesitation or favor, or you just took responsibility and you wrote that check. And for me, I was surprised.
Yeah.
Because that was, that's a significant amount of money. I know you made a commission on the sale and stuff, but still, that's a big piece of money there that you just stood up as a professional and you took care of. And I guess maybe that's standard in your industry, but I'm guessing that not all brokers would have handled it that way.
Yeah.
Number one. Number two that I remember and I am grateful for is the fact that, I can almost say that you're the cause of the majority of my wealth because that building has gone up 6 or 7-fold in 10 years.
Yeah.
And you sold my old building.
Yep.
You brought me to the new one, and now here we are with Matador Capital, which I think I'm one of the first 4 investors with.
Yeah.
And I have the same trust and you run with it.
Yeah.
Right? You run with it. And I think a lot of our people the people I brought to the group and probably a lot of your investors probably have a similar, maybe a similar outlook with you. And all we see is those distributions and those sales and those gains and the way you handle everything, you and your team. And that is something that is really exciting for the future in terms of real estate and industrial investment and development. And, we got to continue growing together in that regard.
Well, the one thing, and you touched on this at the very beginning, but like one thing we really try to do here is just be very transparent about everything that's going on, good or bad, and, it's kind of, you touched on it, that transparency, it breeds trust in everybody, right? It's like, not every deal always goes according to plan. Some of them go way better than planned, and some of them go a little less than planned. We usually try to mitigate the downside by going in right, on the deal. But at the end of the day, we always get it figured out. And, a lot of my people now, they're just like, I don't even, I don't even know what we're buying. Just I'm sending it because it's, it's
Right.
we try to operate the company where you feel comfortable about doing it every time. It's I've seen deals where people have given people money and then they don't hear from them ever again, or not ever again, but like it's like pulling teeth to get an update on anything like that. And that's kind of like, you're talking about the continuous improvement within your business. We have things too. It's like, I'm in the process of like a project working on bettering my asset reporting to everybody. And I always kind of say, some investors care about that and will read it. Some of them probably never, most of them probably won't.
But it's your diligence to do it.
But it's my diligence to do it. And so I kind of look at it like this is more for me than it really is for the investor to know, like to measure my performance, So, so those are some things that I'm trying to work on within here. But, it's, a lot of this company started with my brokerage clients that, hey, we worked very well together on this transaction, and industrial real estate's worked very well for all of us, and let's do some more of it, So
I mean, it's been fun to watch you grow. I know all the different steps of your original steel business from with your dad, and then the one in Brook Hollow, and then hitting the streets and knocking on doors pretty heavily during that 10-year, 20-year, I don't know, period. And then transitioning over into the steel business again and having some challenges that you overcame, and then now into this higher level investment group, which I'm happy for you, and I admire your dedication and energy that you give to it. It's inspiring for me. See a guy who wakes up 5, 6 in the morning and works hard till night, and all day you're going, but you can tell that you love it. And you're blessed to have that energy and leadership with your team, and wishing you the best growth,
we love it. It's funny. Me and Will always talk about how, man, we're just like, golly, we'd love getting up and coming here every day and like just chopping up deals, looking at buildings, figuring out how to make these things work. It's a continuous puzzle we're building, and it's a lot of fun. One thing you didn't mention, how did you get the name? Where did Generation Trade? Where did you make the name of that from?
It goes back again to those 10 years of kind of soul searching, traveling, thinking about, what to do in life. Nobody really ever went to university, and education wasn't a big thing in our family. But I said, I want to go to college, and I know that's not going to hurt me. And then those next 10 years were a little bit challenging, even though they were fun and learning things. But inside, I felt like, man, there's got to be more. There's got to be something deeper, more meaningful, And so when I decided to be an importer and a wholesaler, like in that traditional setting, it goes back to the story I told you about the peddlers from New York City selling, my grandfather and his people, and then my father, who was also a salesman and had some liquor stores in New York and different businesses. He tried different businesses in that small town of Olean. But I look back at my father and my grandfather, and then even the people, like the Lebanese people, historically, you see a lot of business owners, business people, but even their ancestors, the Phoenicians, that were 2,000, 3,000, 4,000 years, before Christ. They were in the boats, rowing and selling their goods in North Africa and Tunisia and the Mediterranean, and having the idea of business and trade. And I'm like, you know what? Even though I'm trying to do something unique with this different direction of school and such, maybe there's something, I need to be working in an office or this, that. In the end, I just ended up landing in the same place that all my ancestors did. And that is in the generations of business. And I thought it was a meaningful name because it kind of sums up all those other experiences and deliberations about what to do with life. Because, there was nobody really there pushing me or saying, oh, you need to do this, or why don't you be like your dad and be a lawyer, a doctor, or engineer or something, So I guess we end up just like our people.
It's in your DNA.
Yeah. It can, at least it can be, right?
Yeah.
And it feels good being in that, on that path. It feels natural. It may not be the case in all cases where people want to do what their ancestors did, or their father or their grandparents, but sometimes it happens.
Yeah. That's cool. That's it. That's it. I knew this. Yeah, I wanted to hear that because I knew that's.
Yeah, meaningful.
There's very meaningful meaning behind it. So, well, man, this has been really awesome. Like it's your stories. It always amazed me. The transaction was one of my favorite transactions in my real estate career, and just it was so interesting seeing how just you never one thing let's talk about one other thing I learned in your transaction is you never know. Clients will give you parameters. They'll give you geography and size, right? But sometimes if you stretch those things, there's options. Like 150,000 feet was not on the radar.
No.
Like at all.
Right.
And, but, it was just like, hey, this is kind of interesting, you know, and here we go, Yes. So that was another kind of lesson I learned out of that was just, you gotta push some people in some different directions on some things, because sometimes, when someone's hiring you as a broker, they expect you to be the expert in this situation. That's why they're working with you and letting you handle this size of a transaction for them. And, sometimes they don't know what they don't know about their own needs, right? To a degree. It's like, hey, I only need 50,000 feet. It's like, well, I know this is different, but like this could work,
Yes.
And so
I even advise my customers now, do whatever you can to buy your business property.
Yeah.
And especially in this, market of Texas and North Texas and even Oklahoma and other places, as I mentioned to you before we started the interview, I've learned recently that some of our competitors in the area can no longer afford the rent. It's extremely high.
Yeah.
For a lot of these, because the margin in our business is not so big as a wholesaler.
Yeah.
And if the real estate becomes such a big portion, then their pricing is no longer competitive with others.
Yeah.
And people in Class A buildings that are renting right now in the Metroplex are going through some trouble right now. And the profitability may not even exist or not be so great.
That's the one thing too. I'm glad you said this because this is a very important thing I think for business owners is to own your own building, because sometimes your business isn't worth anything at the end, or no one wants it, or there's no one to take it over, or and at that point, all of your wealth is in that building.
Yes.
And so I've seen many a times where, I've lent money to businesses that had so much value in their building, they needed working capital. So I gave them, attached a lien on their building for working capital.
Right.
But I'm looking at their business going, golly, all your wealth has been created in this building, and you've been sitting here in this business, and that business it's not really going to make it,
Right.
Or it just doesn't make a lot of it. It pays. It makes the owner a living, right? And he doesn't have to go work for someone. But but at the same time, the wealth creation is in owning your own building and mitigating your downside, like you're talking about right now.
Right.
That's another thing that I see now when someone wants to go sell their company. I'm like,
can you afford the rent?
Could the next buyer afford the rent? Yeah.
Right.
Hey, your company's netting, $300,000 a year, but your rent's about $150,000 shy of what it should be. So the value of your business just got cut in half because of the market rent on the property. So those are some things that I always look at, like, if you're a business owner, you got to stay in tune with what's going on in the real estate market, because maybe even because you own your own building, it still affects you if you're trying to exit your company. So those are always things to be thinking about. And But that's always the fascination part of me with all this stuff is just all the little levers that pull things in different directions, on these on the numbers of stuff. And because
I think the one thing that's very interesting is like, how can you share? And I remember one time you told me about at the Dallas Cowboys club there, you were going to get together with a couple players and put together some program for young people to learn about business and investing. But I don't recall all the details of that. But, how important it is. That's why I asked you, who's the audience of this podcast? Is it young kids who are aspiring to create business and maybe they can learn or be inspired by certain stories or traits or decisions that were made in yours or mine or others' businesses? But I think that's really important, and I would love to do something like that in the future to share that information with young people who were like me in my 20s, who had a little bit of fear about taking the jump, but in the end they did it. They measured and decided what to do. And, just to kind of ease those fears and maybe encourage more people to create jobs and to create businesses. Because when I go back to my hometown, the population went from 21,000 down to 13,000. Buildings empty everywhere. Okay. And I say to myself, I start getting like deep into this thought about many questions about why and how can they rebuild this town? It's a beautiful place. And, what does it take for businesses to come in here and the local government and incentives and taxes? And, how can they stimulate job growth and young entrepreneurs to take risks and prepare and plan and open a small mattress factory up there or a furniture factory or whatever it might be. And those are the things that are really going to bring America to be healthier. Because now we see drug problems up there. We see them sending people with special housing needs because the real estate's so cheap, and people are going there now and they're giving them housing from different parts of New York to live in these houses that are paid for by the government. And it's like, man, who can help this? Who's going to do something about this? It's businesses.
It's this small business owner. Yeah, it is. No, I think at the end of the day, one of the biggest things I learned how to do was be creative. And I think that's what small business owners need to be. They need to be creative. It's like it's funny. There's a course called No Money Down Real Estate, and I've heard a lot of people make fun of it, but me and my brother bought it, and I was like, this isn't always all about no money down real estate, but it's about ways to think of creative ways to create value out of something, which is kind of like your whole story here is you created all this value out of all these different things, right? Look for the opportunity and create value. I mean, you probably could have had a full-on college note company course nationwide if you would have just
committed to it,
right? But I mean, but you saw a need and you exploited it,
right?
You know what I mean? Yes. And that's what So I think to your point about talking about the course thing that we talked about at some point, and it's like I think without even having that, I think the biggest thing is to be creative. Find 10 solutions.
Yes.
And it's just like when we look at a building, I'm like, the first thing I think of on a building is how am I getting out of this? Like, where's the escape hatch on this? Like, where's the fire exit door on this thing? If it goes bad,
right,
I can get out of this, these many exits on this. Okay, great. That makes me feel good because I got a lot of optionality here. You know what I mean? And so I think it's the same thing with becoming very, creative and being a business owner. So, but at the end of the day, it takes people taking risk. And so people need to learn how to take risks and calculated risks.
And the number one word, I think, is optimism.
Yeah.
I remember seeing somewhere in Garland, I would drive from the insurance agency back to Rockwall.
Yeah.
And they had some kind of club, and maybe you're familiar with it. I'm not too. It's called the optimism. It's in Garland.
Yeah.
And it's like a salesman's club.
Okay.
I forget the name of it, but I was like, man, what a weird name.
Yeah.
And what is that all about?
Yeah.
But really, if what it comes down to is optimism is so critical to keep an open mind and to be trusting of other people.
Yeah.
for you to run capital
Yeah.
of people who invest, for me to put the factory in the hands of Hector, or for me to put our team in charge of, container sales, and, just to trust and flow and go.
Yeah.
Optimism and trust.
Yep, it is. Well, Andre, this has been awesome, man. Your story's incredible. I'm so glad we've got to work together for so long, and I just appreciate you coming on here today, and I think everybody's going to get a kick out of this.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you.
So, Andre Simon, everybody.
All right. Thank you, Jeremy.
Yeah.